Welcome to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Here's your host, the Bitcoin Boomer himself, Gary Leland.
And welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin Boomer Show. I'm here today to talk about Bitcoin. Now, I want to make sure you know this show is not for boomers, okay? It's for people who are interested in Bitcoin, have Bitcoin, want to find out about Bitcoin, wherever you lie in that. And I'm the boomer. That's why it's the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Now, this show is great for anyone who's a boomer or a teenager if you just want to find out about Bitcoin. I'm recording from the BizTalk studios in beautiful Arlington, Texas, and we'll have a great guest for you. We have Justin from Lightning.video on today, but before we go any further, please welcome Stephanie, my great producer. Stephanie, thoughts? You research our guests. Thoughts on this one?
So what you just said, Lightning.video with Justin. Curious about that. Kind of gives me like YouTube content creator vibes. So interested what he's got to say about what that platform is.
Yeah, it looks like a great thing he's building. He's been building it there for a while. And actually at BitBlock Boom, for those who don't know, I run the BitBlock Boom conference this year in Dallas, Texas. Justin will be streaming the video from the conference. It'll be a free stream. So if you're interested in finding out about the streaming service, please go to lightning.video. But Justin will tell us quite a bit more about that when he comes on the show. He also has, Shockwallet and Shock.net, I believe, or Shocknet. So I'll have to get more descriptions on those also as he comes on the show. But one thing, like I said earlier, or I'm going to say several times during the show, our whole goal here is to educate you about Bitcoin. That's it. That's all I want to do, is make sure you know about Bitcoin. Bitcoin has gone from, over the last 12, 13 years, from basically a nickel to $73,000. That's quite a rise. It's the fastest growing asset on the planet by far. So you want to find out about this. You really do. Whether you buy any or not is a whole different thing. You really need to learn about this, because I personally believe this is the future of money. It may take a while to become money, but it is the future, and you need to know what's going on in life. This will affect everybody. No matter whether you want it to affect you or not, it's going to. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back in a minute with Justin after these words from our sponsor. So we'll see you in just a moment. Hang on. Thanks. Hello and welcome back. We have got a great show for you today. We really do. But before I start this part of the show and bring on our guest, I do want to ask you to do me a favor. If you know anyone that you think might be interested in learning more about Bitcoin, or maybe they don't even want to learn more about Bitcoin, but you think it will help them to know about Bitcoin, please share this show with them. What we try to do on this show is to educate you about Bitcoin. That's all we want to do, is educate you. I'm not going to be pulling up some company to sell you Bitcoin as a super deal during the show. I don't have any Bitcoin I want to sell. I don't have companies on here that want to sell Bitcoin. But I do have someone on today. I have Justin on today from, Shocknet, Shockwallet, Lightning.video. Justin's doing a lot of stuff. He's been coming to BitBlock Boom for years and years. Someone I consider a friend. Justin, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's nice to be in the middle of a bull run. Fresh all-time highs today.
It is nice to be in a bull run. We were talking about that before the show. It's always pleasant to wake up to a higher price in Bitcoin versus a lower price. But I think if you've been in Bitcoin as long as you and I have, you really don't care what the price is. It's not like you cry when it goes down and you like go buy a new Lamborghini when it goes up. You know, you just plug along as it moves through time and space.
Yeah, I think that's one of the key features of Bitcoin. I think the volatility is something that is a great filter for people coming in. They say you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve, and that could be very well you buy it and then you panic sell, and then you buy higher. Right?
do
So it's
buy
not necessarily when you go in, when you learned about it, it's when you started to hold that Bitcoin.
You're exactly right. You know, when I first got into Bitcoin, 7, 8 years ago, I was like, and I think this is very common for people who are new to Bitcoin. I was telling everybody I knew about it, not because I thought it was going to make my Bitcoin more valuable, but because I felt like I had to tell them so they could take advantage of it and get on the Bitcoin train and be making these gains that we've seen up to $73,000. I thought it was my duty as a friend to share that information with them. And like I said, I think that's how a lot of new Bitcoiners are. They're excited, they want to do that. I think that's very common, but I don't do that anymore because I found so many people that I did, and not so many, but some of the people I orange pilled or talked into buying Bitcoin through my excitement would buy it, and then it would drop, and they'd get scared, they'd sell it, and they ended up losing money. Where if they had held it for a few years and had some diamond hands, they'd be at 5-fold, 10-fold. But they couldn't do that because it is a volatile asset, and the more bear markets you go through, the less you're concerned with it. You agree with that completely? That's the way it is.
Right. It's really an idea. And like you share this idea with, people you care about. You share books. You share, maybe stuff from your church. You share things that enrich your life, and you want to, kind of spread that, evangelize that to others. And people will listen because they're polite, but that doesn't mean they're ready to hear it, right? Like you don't give up on them. You have to kind of work on them over time, and eventually they get it. And that's, kind of like your entry price in Bitcoin, what you own when you considered yourself a Bitcoiner. That is a function. The information's out there to be discovered. And it's when the walls break down that allow you to embrace these new ideas. And that's, I think, what Bitcoiners mean. When you get Bitcoin at the price you deserve is, at what point did you humble yourself to, learn something that might have been counterintuitive to, your life up until that point?
Yeah, I was just telling Stephanie a minute ago that someday, and I don't think she really grasped this, and maybe she did and I'm wrong, but I told her someday you're going to be able to tell people you bought Bitcoin, because I've orange pilled her now. She's been here with me for 2 years, so she is orange pilled now. So I told her that someday you're going to be able to tell people you bought Bitcoin under $100,000, and that's going to be a big deal. And people are going to go, wow, you were so lucky to buy it at under $100,000, because that's what's going to happen, in my humble opinion. But before going further, Justin, give us a little bit of bio on who is Justin.
So I've been in Bitcoin. Some people would say an OG, but of course, it's a learning curve, right? You don't jump into Bitcoin with both feet. You begin to understand it. I began to understand it in 2013. I've been a lifelong libertarian. I was like a Ron Paul guy back in 2008. I was living in New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project, which some people might know is like a plan to have a bunch of libertarians move and take over the state of New Hampshire. So I started to hear about it around then. And what kind of catalyzed it for me was someone I worked with who was not in that libertarian circle. I'd call them more of a normie, right? This was in Boston, like far from a libertarian area. And a coworker asked me about it because he needed it to pay for a subscription to a news group service online. And this was the first time I had heard of it in passing, like from the same people that were passing grams of gold around at like farmers markets, just trying to get off fiat. Like the problems with fiat in the libertarian circles were very well known up to that point. They have been for decades. I had ignored Bitcoin to that point because I just thought it was another one of these things where it's just like passing gold around at a farmer's market and it's kind of pointless. But then when this person outside of that social circle asked about it for an actual utility and paying for something on the internet, and that's when it struck me, is that it was this unstoppable money for the internet. And I came at it from that permissionless commerce perspective. The narrative today around Bitcoin is, that it's a store of value, and that is obviously the most important thing. We can't have money unless that money is hard. But that kind of started my journey into Bitcoin, that freedom element, that we could transact among peers, that there was no trust involved, and that there was utility already amongst people that didn't really care about it as, a store of value, but it had utility back then. And that was kind of the beginning of my journey with it, playing with it, to set up services on the internet and so forth like that. Store of value came later. But it was when Lightning was introduced in 2018 that medium of exchange concept consumed me. Like, I have a technical background, used to work for Microsoft, and that's when I had the epiphany that I needed to use my technical ability, building software and infrastructure, to help make Bitcoin this permissionless money of the internet. Satoshi said it early on. It should be like dropping a few cents into a website like it's a vending machine. And that's kind of been the future I've been building towards ever since, both with Lightning Video to deal with, rich media and content monetization and combat, deplatforming, and some of the infrastructure tools we're building for Lightning that is in Shockwallet and some of the infrastructure powering that. So that's the future I see. The store value, world reserve currency, obvious, that is a requirement. But I think if we're going to stay sovereign, if we're going to keep money out of the hands of governments and large banks, we still need to have an economy. And there's a lot of tooling still yet to be built out for that.
And you just mentioned the Lightning there a minute ago, that's what really piqued your interest. And Lightning is the way most people, I would say, are spending Bitcoin now. Really, unless you're making a large purchase, no one's going, let me send you a tenth of a Bitcoin because of the fees. They're using Lightning, which is a layer on top of the Bitcoin network, kind of like MasterCard's a layer on top of capital, on top of dollars, for those who aren't familiar with that. Do you find it, or at least I find it weird when I watch a regular financial show and then they'll be talking about Bitcoin and they'll have someone on there going, you can't spend it. What can you do with it? You can just hold it and drug lords can use it, but you can't spend it. And I always go, well, what are you doing with that gold that you're saving? You certainly can't, you aren't walking around town with a $2,000 gold coin going, hey, I want to buy those pants. Let me cut you off a piece of this. Or a little thing of gold dust that they're weighing on a scale, for you to see how much it's worth. So I don't really understand that argument, but we'll have more time for that when we come back from this break. So please stay tuned. Like I said earlier, if you do know anyone who's interested in finding out about Bitcoin, please share this show with them. And if you watch this show long enough, you're kind of going to know a lot about it and become a semi-expert. And you may even buy some. Who knows? We'll be right back after this word from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Today we're joined by Justin from Shocknet, Lightning Wallet, Shockwallet, or Lightning Video. You're doing a lot of things, my friend, so it's hard to keep up with everything you're doing. Please tell me, one thing I like to ask everybody, because I get so many different answers to this, is what is Bitcoin? According to you, what is Bitcoin? What would be your definition?
I would say it is... it's first, the native money of the internet age. The internet has changed our idea of an economy. It's changed our idea of wealth. Like, anybody under 30 years old today doesn't really know an analog world that most of us grew up in, and how everything is different today. Bitcoin is like that missing puzzle piece for what the next couple hundred years look like. It's this neutral, borderless, just like citizen of the world type money and property that exists in the mind space. It's not tied to your geography like gold or this where people tend to root themselves. And I think that's probably why it's such a difficult concept, especially for older people to accept that kind of grew up in this analog world. Now that, they see the world has become digital, and, there's negative effects of that, of course. But I think Bitcoin is one of the silver linings of that. Like it's this newfound freedom. It's a freedom to think in a certain way. Like, government money, monopoly money, same thing. It has really changed, affected how people think and how the world has evolved. Now that we have this tool in the internet to share information in real time, from anywhere, Bitcoin is this big unlock to actually take advantage of that. Like we can signal information with the internet. We've never been able to signal value instantly. Even things like gold, like we're talking about, you can't spend it because it's very hard to verify. If you're at a merchant, they're going to weigh the gold or they're going to assay the gold. Like it's never been a medium of exchange. Gold is what created banking. Gold was such a bad money that banks needed to be created to hold it and then turn it into notes. Bitcoin solved all that. It's not hard to transport. It's not hard to secure. It's not difficult to verify because it's really the idea of money. And it really just is a big unlock for like this next couple 100 years that communication technology, compute technology is enabling it, and it really just kind of greases the skids for that.
That's a very interesting point you've made. I've never heard it made that way, that gold was such a bad money that they had to create banks. I've never put the two of those together, and you're right. Because that's how banks started. You get notes that this note's worth $5 worth of gold, and they had supposedly had your gold in the bank for you. So I've never heard it put that way. That's a very good point there. When I found out about Bitcoin, it was like the third, or when I guess was orange pilled, it was the third time I had been told about Bitcoin. But the first two, I wasn't told in a manner that would interest me. But the third time I was told about it, I was told that it was the only protocol for the internet that was missing, was a protocol for money. And I had about 20 e-commerce sites at the time. So I was very interested in that. And that's what led me down the rabbit hole of 2 days of intense conversation with a early OG telling me everything about it and explaining it to me, that it was money. Do you find that, when I was a kid, my parents took me down to the bank, opened a little savings account, with $5, and I'd go up there. I could ride my bike up to the bank, because even back then there was a bank on every corner, just like today. And I'd ride my bank up there and put $2 in there in my little passport savings account. But I don't think kids today, even older, young adults, really use banks like we were taught to use. I think more and more of them are discovering digital, and they don't understand the purpose of having a bank account as we would do.
Right. Yeah. And, someone born in the 80s, right? When I was too young to remember was maybe the last time that you actually got paid to put money in a bank. This is something that me and my dad go back and forth on is, he's fine earning interest in the bank, but he is reluctant to admit that he's not actually earning anything. He's like still stuck in this idea in like the 80s where he was getting 10, 15, at some point it was 20% on your money just to park it in the bank. And that was a great deal back then. And if you compounded and leveraged your yields and treasuries or whatever, that was like the way to go back then. There's a lot of guys on yachts right now because they got leveraged interest out of banks decades ago. What we haven't had since at least, 2011 is when the world changed for me. I was a senior in high school. I think that's like the first time rates got lowered. It might have been in the 90s, but rates got lowered to a point where they were very clearly below the cost of everything else going up. So if you put money in savings when, you're someone my age, you graduate high school, get a real job in like the early 2000s, where do you save? You couldn't put it in a savings account because you were losing traction. So anybody my age before Bitcoin that has any money today is because they stumbled into real estate. Like that was the closest thing we had to hard money before Bitcoin. And now Bitcoin is giving these younger kids, they don't need a bank account because they have an app. They can get that. They don't need an adult to take them to the bank and hand their papers in and, slowly see a couple percentage points a year on their savings. It's an instant thing, and it is sucking up. It's a black hole that is sucking up all this, like the worthless fiat in the world. And kids are growing up with that now. They're not growing up with their parents bringing them to a bank to earn nothing. So they're the workers today. They're the ones creating all the services that people have to buy. So where are the productive people able to store what they have earned? There's really only one place for that now, because real estate's a mess. It's a bubble. A lot of people need to retire, sell real estate. Real estate, I think, is going to fall precipitously relative to Bitcoin. There's really no alternative for the next generation because there's no other measuring stick.
Well, you're right on that to the degree, because in the 80s, early 80s, when I first started my business, I started, and right away we were very profitable. So I would end up with $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 in my checking account. So I'd go in and roll it into a CD for 60 days and making money, just moving it from one part of the bank to another. And, so I was like, wow, this is a pretty good deal. I don't remember what I made or what the interest rate was, but I remember that it was like easy money, but the interest rates were pretty high back then. I think when we bought our first house, it was 10.5%. So I'm sure the interest I was making off the CDs were a decent value then. But yeah, you're right. Kids don't have, they don't go to the bank anymore. They have no interest. It's just a matter of time. I believe, I don't know how much time before we start seeing Bitcoin accepted on more and more websites than we do. I'm surprised that that's such a small amount, because that's such an easy implementation to accept Bitcoin. I mean, I do it on BitBlock Boom, and it took to set that up 5 minutes to start accepting Bitcoin.
Yeah, and as bad as, and admittedly, the tooling for accepting Bitcoin is suboptimal, and that's one of the reasons I have my company and we're working on the things we're working on. There's countless founders in Bitcoin trying to do the same thing. But as immature as some of this stuff is, it is still better than the legacy system. Like there's not that friction of the permission of dealing with the banking sector, and then the risk. The other big factor that Lightning is addressing is the risk of not being able to receive payments like that. We see deplatforming on YouTube and so forth, and other types of censorship. You don't have a reliable income unless you have a Bitcoin income.
And no one can take that away from you. I want to get into your Lightning video, which is, you just mentioned, because I think that's going to be a game changer for people who are Bitcoiners and want the freedom, and don't want anyone deplatforming them. That's the main thing. That seems to me to be a crazy thing. They can just take you off the air and shut you down. But we'll be right back with more from Justin right after these words from our sponsor. And welcome back to the Bitcoin Boomer Show, joined by Justin of Shocknet, Shockwallet, Lightning Video, a lot of Bitcoin stuff he's into. Before we get anything else, I want something that I do not think we've ever covered before on this show, and I saw you mention it on your Twitter page. That's what made me think about it. Let's get into UTXOs for a minute. What is a UTXO? We've never covered it. Our audience has never even heard that word. Give us a rundown on UTXOs. From what I understand, you need to convert them into one UTXO, your Bitcoin. Just give us a few minutes on that.
Right. So a UTXO, for the uninitiated, that's kind of shorthand for a unspent transaction output. So when you see that string for a Bitcoin address, that is basically an identifier on the chain for where Bitcoin lives. And the transaction of transferring Bitcoin, sending Bitcoin to an address, you're not really sending it per se. You're signing it over to somebody else. It's like you have a piece of paper and you sign it, and then there's a judge that can say, all right, well, this paper was signed over, that belongs to this person now. That's basically what a UTXO is. The chain is the judge. UTXO is sort of like a contract that it has a specific owner because it was signed over to that owner. So the ownership, having ownership of Bitcoin is to have control over one of these UTXOs or these unspent outputs. And I've been talking about that on Twitter lately because it's a new bull market. Bitcoin's getting a lot of hype. We're seeing a new wave of scams like we did back in the blockchain hype era, that there were a lot of projects claiming to be blockchain projects. So, Bitcoin invented blockchain. Bitcoin's awesome. Invest in our thing because it uses a blockchain too. We're having that again, only, people have woken up to those scams. The scams have changed a little bit. Now everything is a Bitcoin layer 2. So we've had Lightning be this very successful and powerful Bitcoin layer 2. So now there are a wave of new projects calling themselves a Bitcoin layer 2, even though they are not. And they make a bunch of claims that are just technically inaccurate. And that is something they get away with because very few people actually understand how Bitcoin works. So they can raise investments on this concept that they can scale Bitcoin, make it cheaper, make it do all these things. And that's based on this premise of sharing UTXOs, which is simply just not a thing in Bitcoin. So, Bitcoin has a limiting factor of you can either afford to own a UTXO in Bitcoin, or you have to trust somebody else that does. And it's kind of this class warfare attack that we're seeing now in Bitcoin, where there's an element of people, and they're earnest, like they want Bitcoin to be for everybody. They believe that Bitcoin should be something that 8 billion people on Earth can all use frictionlessly. But the hard reality of 21 million Bitcoin is that not everybody is going to be able to do that. Just like not everybody owns a house, not everybody owns a car, not everybody owns a refrigerator. We have families, we have organizations to share valuable assets, and Bitcoin will be similar to that. And that's kind of some of the infrastructure I'm working on behind Shockwallet, is to enable families and small organizations to use Bitcoin efficiently. But at the same time, we need to defend against this new wave of scams. That's the new blockchain. Bitcoin layer 2 is the new blockchain in scammer nomenclature. So that's kind of that at a high level.
Well, tell us
if you're looking to. Yep.
Well, tell us real quick about, since you went into it. I want to know more about Shockwallet, because I think last time I talked to you, you were working on this still. I could be remembering incorrectly, and now from looking, it looks like you have everything accomplished. Can you tell us about Shockwallet real quick?
Yeah, far from accomplished. But when I got started in the building on Lightning, Shockwallet is how I started out. So I had this vision. We talked about how my interest was really in this means of exchange use cases, like store value solved, right? Just use Bitcoin. But if we want to extend Bitcoin to means of exchange, we need new tooling. So I started out with Shockwallet, and the idea was that it would be this kind of decentralized WeChat, where you could have your business page and all this commercial infrastructure in a decentralized way, and censorship resistant, very similar to Bitcoin. And Nostr has kind of enabled that, but Nostr didn't exist when I got started. We experimented with some other similar tech that eventually became Nostr, but we put the wallet on the back burner because there was a lot of wallets coming out at that time. And I was like, you know what? I don't need to be competing with a dozen different wallet startups right now. My background is in infrastructure, so I went to the next point of focus, which we had started working on, which was video. Video is a very technically heavy engineering effort. So that's how we came about Lightning Video, to solve the media issues around commerce. Because if you're selling a product, you still need pictures. You still need a video to demonstrate your product. But one of the use cases we're seeing for Lightning now is content monetization. Like, it might not make sense to pay $4 to unlock something on a streaming platform. It might make sense if it's like a nickel. or even 50 cents, or just these more granular subscriptions. And at the same time, it fixes the incentives because seeing like Elon Musk bought Twitter. Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, I got some feedback there.
Okay. Now continue. I was in trauma.
Yeah, sure. So, so even when we solve the money problem with like content, it solves the platform problem. So even though we might have a more benevolent dictator in Elon Musk in terms of censorship, he still faces pressure from like Congress, and then we saw all the advertisers putting pressure on him, and that's because the incentives are broken with platforms like YouTube. Is that the advertisers make the rules because that's how creators are monetizing. What Lightning does is it allows a creator, if you are producing quality content, your viewers, your consumers can pay you directly, and then you are not beholden to the policies of an advertising network or a platform that is subsequently held by that network. And then you're also not tied into the banking system too. So we might be able to get better content from creators that otherwise couldn't have monetized it without Lightning because they're either in a jurisdiction that there's no banking infrastructure, or they're simply talking about things like that are just not allowed. Like we saw during COVID, you had licensed medical doctors with decades of clinical experience being deplatformed because Pfizer spends billions of dollars with YouTube. So that's not so much a technological censorship, centralized video problem. It's an incentive problem. So with Lightning.video, we've been able to fix that by accepting Lightning. You monetize the creators. The creators pay us. We're more like a GoDaddy or an AWS because the creators are paying us for hosting services because the users are paying them. I don't answer to any advertisers or anything of that sort. This is just infrastructure. My creators pay to host their content. So everything is completely incentive aligned now, and that's only possible because we have Bitcoin mean of exchange at a granular level with Lightning.
So when someone lists their video, because I was looking at the site the other day and thinking about listing something, and I didn't get back to it. But if I wanted to put this show, this episode, on the site on Lightning Video, I'd pay so many sats to have it hosted. Is that a flat fee, a monthly fee? And then I would be able to reap payments from other Bitcoiners. And actually, we only have about 49 seconds left to be precise. So I know that answer is going to take longer than 49 seconds. So why don't we talk about that when we come back from this commercial break? And for anyone who's watching, please stay tuned for after this break. And like I say over and over and over, share this show with your friends. That's all I ask. That's all I ask. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. So please stay tuned. See you in a minute. And welcome back to the show. Today we're with Justin from Shocknet and Shockwallet and Lightning Video. And let's get back to my question. Okay, I want to upload this show. I go to your site, I upload it, I pay some sats. Is that a fee that changes? And is it a one-time charge? Is it a monthly charge, yearly charge? Give us the breakdown on how Lightning Video works.
So it's usage based. So you would you'd upload a video, or we'll have a new flow coming soon where you create a page, so to speak, and you're basically paying an admission initially of like 50 cents. And what that's doing is that's preventing a lot of spam bots. Like that's kind of the problem with like other platforms that are advertiser funded, is that because they let stuff get up there for free, they end up subsidizing a bunch of crap, where us charging 50 cents is that great filter. And then from that 50-cent deposit, that's sort of like a credit on your account that we can deduct from for things like bandwidth and storage. So it's very similar to how you would pay. You might pay a couple dollars a month at like GoDaddy for web hosting, and then you might need a bigger plan if you have like a really popular site. but because it's Lightning, we can just deduct, a nickel at a time or less, and then you just top that up. So it could be like a hosting account that you maybe pay 50 cents a month for if that's all you need. You're literally just paying us for the resources in the data center, and that's a function of how much traffic you're doing. And that should also be a derivative of your earnings. So if you are generating a ton of traffic, because everybody knows the Bitcoin Boomer Show is like the must-see Bitcoin news show, you're going to use a lot of bandwidth. You're going to pay a higher rate because you're getting a lot of traffic and you're earning that revenue. So it's allowing kind of cream to float to the top, where you're paying for what you use, but you only are paying for what you get back in terms of viewership. And that, again, flips those incentives back to where we're incentivizing higher quality content instead of just a bunch of crap that ends up on YouTube and TikTok in the off chance that it gets millions of hits. So higher signal content that the cost to the creator is known and and has those incentives realigned.
So if people are tipping me or enjoying my content and they're saying, hey, I want to give them $1, I want to give them 50 cents, or I want to give them $5 or whatever, that kind of goes into my account. And if my videos are getting more and more plays, which means more cost to you, then you pull it out of that.
Right. Yeah, that's like a credit that you would have on the platform to pay those. But we also are working on some of the stuff that goes into Shockwallet. It makes this non-custodial too. So let's say you already have a credit on Lightning Video and then you get a big wave of viewership. There's no reason for that to pass through the service. You could just issue an invoice to your own node. So the monetization element of Lightning Video is, working on having that completely custodial, because you only need a certain amount to cover your hosting charges. So it's this great hybrid ability, because we can serve invoices either to the service or to your own self-custodied Lightning node. So it's not like you're paying a percentage of your revenues. You're literally just paying for bandwidth and storage like you would as if it were AWS or GoDaddy.
So I need to start uploading the Bitcoin Boomer Show on there and see how it does. I do like the idea that no one's going to be able to cut me off. I was telling you a story this morning how we were being penalized from Twitter because of we had the word S-coin on there. So It's crazy that they can do that. What is Shocknet?
So Shocknet's just like the parent company for these products. So most of our software is open source. Shocknet is the most viable way to build tools for Bitcoin, I think, is a venture startup. Our company is Shock.network for the corporate company, but our products, Shockwallet.app and Lightning.video, are the two products that are mostly in production. It's still kind of alpha release days for both of those. This is still very new stuff. I've only been full-time at this for less than a year. This has been mostly a moonlight operation until somewhat recently. So we're starting to pick up some traction. Wallet is usable. Video has been in use for a while. We're still making a lot of improvements to both of those, and looking to add some Noster elements, particularly to the video site too. So it makes it even more decentralized and less dependent on us, and make sure that people can retain their property. That I don't want creators to be building a mansion in somebody else's backyard. And that's kind of what happens with platforms today. If we get these things protocolized, much like Bitcoin is, it is much better for the internet at large. It's much better for creators. And I think we'll just have a more prosperous and better experience on the internet the closer we get to that.
Well, let's kind of in case we run out of time after this, I want you to go ahead and tell people where they can follow you, where they can find you, blah, 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 everything they need to see what's going on in Justin's world.
Yeah, the best place for product updates specifically is at ShockBTC on Twitter. We'll post any updates to the product there. Of course, like I said, lightning.video is up and in production. You can create an account there. If you have any issues, please contact us. You can get hold of us through Twitter. There's some Telegram links on the website as well for a Telegram chat. That's Shock BTC also on Telegram. And Shockwallet.app. We haven't officially released Shockwallet.app yet. That is an alpha release. But if you reach out to us, we can help you get set up. If you have an iPhone or something, we can send you a test flight, invitation code, things like that. The Shock Wallet will be very interesting to folks that are maybe already run their own Lightning node or have thought about it, but haven't done it yet because the juice hasn't been worth the squeeze. So we have some other technology that enables Shock Wallet for you to share your Lightning node from your home with friends, family, and customers without any of the complicated networking that would typically be associated with that. And we do that with Nostr. For people who don't know, that's a decentralized social network, and we use it to tunnel some networking stuff to your home node. So you can basically be your own wallet of Satoshi for your friends and family. And that greatly subsidizes the cost you might have of opening a Lightning channel and running a node at home. So I think that's how we get self-custodial means of exchange Bitcoin into the hands of 1 billion families. And I want to emphasize families, not individuals, because the critics will say we can't scale Bitcoin to billions of people, just like we haven't scaled housing or cars or refrigerators to billions of people. We're trying to build the infrastructure that allows people to share utility of these valuable pieces of property.
Well, that's really great. I'm going to have you send me a test flight, as a matter of fact, because I've already, while you were talking, I went earlier to the site and tried to get it, and then I see that it's not available yet. So when we get through with the show, I'm going to give you an address to send that test flight to, because I am interested in trying it out. Well, Justin, I do want to tell you, I appreciate you coming on the show. And again, I appreciate your support over the years, not only by being a sponsor at this year's conference, but by coming and giving your input to everything we're doing. We should be streaming, I don't know why I say we should be. We're going to be streaming this year's conference out on Lightning, the Lightning Video Network. So that'll be a chance for people to use it and see what happened and see how it's working. The regulars at BitBlock Boom, or the regular people who are wanting to learn. So thank you once again for coming on the show. I do appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me. Look forward to seeing you in Texas.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And we'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. So do stay tuned and do check out Lightning Video. I think it's fantastic. I can't wait to get the testnet so I can start messing with it myself. Or that's for the Shock Wallet. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I can already do Lightning Video. I'm out of it. But I'm a boomer, right? So what do you expect? We'll be right back after these words from our sponsor. And welcome back to the show. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I actually enjoyed talking with Justin. I've known him for many years, but that's probably the most I talked to him in one setting, because I always see him at the conference and I'm always so busy. So it was nice to actually sit down and talk with Justin. I enjoyed also finding out about Lightning.video. I think that's going to be a great resource that he's building. Stephanie, my wonderful producer here in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. What'd you think of Justin? What'd you think of the show today? Always like to get the input from the peanut gallery here.
Yeah, so I was really interested and compelled by his, what his statement was regarding, hey, let's build more into the commerce aspect of Bitcoin and Lightning and making that a more fully fledged out ecosystem. So that was really cool to see what he's doing with Lightning Video and Shock Wallet. We've had many wallet people with wallets on, but to see this aspect of it is another layer that makes Bitcoin really cool.
And I think Justin is just an example of some of the brightest minds out there are voluntarily working to build stuff on the Bitcoin blockchain. So, that's what Bitcoin is people building things that are going to be great for the future of Bitcoin. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Before we go, I do want to make sure you know about BitBlock Boom. BitBlock Boom is the conference I host in Dallas, Texas. This is our 7th year, making us the longest running Bitcoin conference. So if you're interested in Bitcoin or interested in finding out about Bitcoin, please go to bitblockboom.com and maybe we'll see you at the conference in Dallas, Texas this April. A month from now, actually. So do check that out. Also want to make sure you know about meetup.com/bitblockboom. That's our meetup we have usually in Dallas, Texas, but we have once a month meetup in Dallas, Texas. Meetup.com/bitblockboom. I do coffee meetups. Whenever I travel, I usually do a coffee meetup there. So no matter whether you're in Dallas, Fort Worth or not, join meetup.com/bitblockboom in case I'm in your town hosting a meetup. Also want to make sure you know about satcardshop.com. Satcardshop.com is the place to buy sat cards. Now, what are sat cards? They're a mechanism. They're like a credit card or a debit card, but you can put Bitcoin on them. That's right. You can put Bitcoin on the card and give it away as a gift. So if you needed a stocking stuffer or a present for a graduation, it's the perfect way to give Bitcoin. I do appreciate you watching today's show, and for those who come back week after week after week, I thank you and look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Bitcoin Boomer Show. Stack those sats.